Let me preface this by saying that I live in a very quiet part of Minnesota, and the area that I live in is not one that has a lot of people actively living in it. Most of our local population is generated by summer vacationers coming from all around the state, and even the country, to spend time at their lake cabins. Anyway, there's a house on my street about a mile down, and technically speaking, this house is the closest thing I have to a next door. Again, this area is pretty sparsely populated. I've lived here most of my life, about 20 years, and as long as I can remember, this house has been empty. When I was younger, I never really thought anything of it. It's a ways away, and I never really went out onto the road because we had enough property I didn't feel the need to explore over there. But as I grew older, I also grew more adventurous, and on a few select occasions, some friends and I would go poke around it just to see what was there. The house was weird. First off, it was oddly slanted, like it wasn't built by someone who knew what they were doing. It had a detached garage that I've never seen opened not once in my entire life. And it had a kid's playhouse in the backyard that was completely rotted out and filled with junk. Once, on permission from the owners, my dad and I took a look around inside. On that first trip, I don't remember anything very interesting. The house was completely empty, but there was always something off about it. The floor plan was strange. You had to enter through what I can only describe as a bastard offspring of a pantry and an above-ground cellar, which led into a small T-shaped hallway between the kitchen and the bedroom. The kitchen then was connected to the living room, which split off into another bedroom, which had a staircase leading to the second floor. There was a room attached to the kitchen/living room, but I never saw it opened. Based on what I could see from outside, it can't have been a very large room. The staircase leading to the top floor was incredibly narrow and very poorly designed. It sloped at odd angles and the ceiling was too low. I remember thinking that even as a kid. The upstairs itself was just flat out wrong. It was filled with cubby holes and nooks and crannies built into the walls that all seemed to connect. The rooms were far too small, and there was a bathroom that had a tub that seemed to be filled with either blood, shit, or rust, but the lights didn't work and we didn't bring a flashlight. That was the other thing. It was too dark upstairs, even in the middle of the day. The floor up there was slanted too. If you were to put a marble at one end, it would roll on its own all the way to the stairs. I never liked that place, and I never went back until a few years later, and that's when things got weird. My friends and I had always floated around the idea that the place was haunted. I mean, how could you not, right? But we never had any proof or anything. We never tried to go in. Until one day, when I was feeling extra cocky and I wanted to show off, I broke in through the window to the weird cellar pantry thing and unlocked it for everyone else to follow. Things were different this time. The house felt heavier, off, more so than before. We brought along some camcorders to fill the house and started doing so as soon as we were all inside, but they suffered from technical problems the entire time. The first thing I noticed was that the side room that I had never been in was open, so we all walked over to it. It was small enough to either be a walk-in closet or a child's bedroom, and it had the only piece of furnishing in the entire building, a dresser. And on top of it was the only solid object in the house, a small, maybe 2 to 3 inches tall, figurine of the Virgin Mary, placed squarely on the center of the dresser, staring straight ahead. Being stupid teenagers, we knocked it off the dresser onto the ground where we left it. We then tried to go upstairs, but before we could even get 1 foot on the first step, our camcorders, of which we brought 2, simultaneously shut off. Just instantly powered down, with both of them displaying a single message on their screens. Goodbye. They were two different brands. Goodbye was not the message either displayed when you powered them off. We heard a door slam somewhere in the house and we all collectively noped the fuck out of there. Not to be discouraged though, we rallied outside and decided to go back in. After all, it was probably just the wind. The problem was, there wasn't any wind that day. We tried to get back in, but curiously, the door which we had left unlocked was locked again, so we had to break back in through the window. This time, just myself and my close friend Levi went. The rest were too scared. We didn't even make it into the living room when we saw in the side room that Mary was back on the dresser, and was turned now to stare directly at us. Stumbling into each other in a panic, Levi and I left as quickly as we could, but the door wouldn't budge. So once more we climbed through the window, cutting ourselves on the glass we had been so careful to avoid previously. As we ran from the house, we looked into the upstairs window. The curtains were blowing as if in a breeze, but like I said, there was no wind. Not that it would matter because that window couldn't open, it was painted shut. We never went back to that house, and any time I passed by or got close to it, a strange shiver would go down my spine, and a sense of dread would overcome me every time I looked into its windows. My uncle demolished the house a few years later, but the Mary figurine was never found. Strangely, they reported that there was a secret room built into the garage that was completely waterlogged and containing nothing but an antique toolbox, completely drenched and containing a single screwdriver. To this day, I have no idea what any of that meant, but I do know one thing. If you find any sort of religious iconography in an abandoned house, don't fucking touch it. If you get out, you will never feel the same again.